Welcome to the final episode of this program for pre-Labor Day. I'm Mark Halperin. This is Two-Way Tonight. Welcome in. Thank you for joining. If you're here on the Two-Way platform, want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you're watching on X or YouTube, don't raise your hand. No smack in the chat. You're going to see me tested on peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace for all today, because there's some stories out there that are a little complicated. We'll talk about them. We have two great guests, actually three great guests, 2/3 incomplete. Two great guests. Lyndsay Keith, independent journalist who's been here before. Matt Bennett of the Third Way will be here. Interesting project that they did that I'm super curious to talk to Matt about. And then a candidate for the governorship of California, running as a Democrat, Stephen Cloobeck, who I had a chance meeting with the other day, and fascinating gentleman. He'll be here to talk about California as someone who's been involved in Democratic politics as a donor, as a political supporter, but now running as a gubernatorial candidate. So big news that broke shortly before we began the program. The Justice Department chose Friday afternoon in August to release the audio and transcript of Ghislaine Maxwell's interview with the Deputy Attorney General. And it's damn interesting. And we're going to play a lot of it for you as we cue that up. But let me make one thing clear from the top. Ms. Maxwell and I don't know how much we have in common. But we have one thing in common for sure. Neither of us believes that Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide. She made that clear in the interview, and I don't believe he did either. That's just my point of view. But anyway, so we're going to get through a bunch of stuff. I'm going to run through some headlines in a moment, and then we're going to get our guests in. We're going to play some of this Maxwell sound when it's ready of her long interview. I mean, the thing was 8 hours, so we're not going to play all 8 hours for you. That'd be silly in an hour show. Even I can do that math. And then we're going to take your questions, comments, and then again, we're going to talk to Stephen Cloobeck later in the show. Let me run through some news beyond the Maxwell audio and transcript. Mr. Bolton, as most of you probably know, because you've got phones, his house was searched this morning by the Justice Department, the FBI. John Bolton seemingly being investigated for the question of whether he leaked classified information. Other thing I need to tell you about the Maxwell interview that's getting attention so far as people go through it is she says she never saw Donald Trump in, quote, any inappropriate setting. So the Bolton home was searched. We still don't have the search warrant at this hour. Not really clear why, but both the president and J.D. Vance talked about that. We'll talk about that. Kilmar Abrego Garcia released to his family, but he may well be deported. That happened today. Lots going on with the Fed. Powell spoke in Jackson Hole. And said that tariffs were causing some inflation, but maybe he would cut rates. The stock market boomed on that. And the president said that Ms. Cook on the Fed, that if she doesn't quit, he's going to fire her. And of course, there's some question about whether he can fire her. So we'll talk about that. Have I missed anything? Let me see. I don't think so. Okay. So stand by in just a moment.
You can play a clip if you want.
Yeah, let's play one. Let's play one clip. What is this? Let's get one in before we move on. Go ahead.
2 minutes.
So you think he did not die by suicide, given all the things we just talked about?
I do not believe he died by suicide. No.
And do you believe that? Do you have any speculation or view of who killed him?
No, I don't.
And I ask that because if you don't believe that there's any truth to the allegations of blackmail or that he had kind of a list or that he had reasons to have people hate him, why would somebody kill him in prison?
In prison, where I am, they will kill you, or they will pay, somebody can pay a prisoner to kill you for $25 worth of commissary is about the going rate for a hit with a lock today.
So that goes to the third reason, which is kind of the mismanagement or the shortfallings or shortcomings of the Bureau of Prisons.
Yes.
Which is a little bit different than my question is, which is, do you think there's somebody on the outside of prison, so putting aside what could happen on the inside, on the outside of prison, who wanted him dead so badly that he would have, or she would have, you know, caused him to be killed on the inside?
I think I don't see that. I think, is it possible? Of course it's possible, but I don't know of any reason why, and I don't believe in the blackmail or in any of this. I don't think Epstein had a hit on like that. If it is indeed murder, I believe it was an internal situation.
So I've read a lot about this, and as I already said, I'm very skeptical that he killed himself. This is a different theory. Maybe some of you have read it because you're more widely read on this than I am. But the notion that he was killed, you know, because somebody wanted some Slim Jims from the commissary, rather than that he was killed because of anything related to his criminal activity separate. So interesting. Again, there's plenty more. We'll play more for you as we queue it up. Quickly, reminder, our sponsor, Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth is, I'm wearing the pants again. I've been wearing them all day, and I went to the beach in them, and I'm wearing them at the beach. Nobody said to me, why are you wearing such fancy pants at the beach? And then I'm going to a dinner in a moment at a pretty nice restaurant. Same pants. This is from bamboo, keeps me cool. They look great. They're so comfortable. And just like the bedding, same with the bedding, the shirts, everything. Cozy Earth makes super comfortable stuff, particularly great in the summer because it keeps you so cool. But you're going to want to buy some. Go online, take a look at it now. I know I keep pushing the pants, but I love the pants. So if you're going to buy stuff, I'd start with the pants. Upgrade right now your summer sleep, but also your pants options. Go to cozyearth.com. Use the code TWOWAY. Get 40% off. So you're buying a pair of pants that will change your life, as they have mine, for 40% off. That's kind of crazy. cozyearth.com. Use the code TWOWAY for 40% off. Sleep cooler, lounge lighter, stay cozy. All right. Let's go back to talking about the news, and let's go ahead and bring in our guests if they're here. Let's see. Lyndsay Keith is here. Lyndsay, welcome. Thank you for coming back on Two-Way. Your thoughts on what you've heard so far from the Maxwell video, audio, and transcript. Unmute and tell us what you think.
Thanks. It's great to be back with you, Mark, and all your guests and viewers. I think, you know, releasing something on a Friday night is interesting. My first reaction to this is the administration has had a hard time resolving this story, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. But you also have to remember that they're the ones, and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who are the ones who went to go seek out Maxwell and this testimony and this conversation from her in an effort to try to appease, I would say, the base, and appease those who feel like there wasn't transparency and there hasn't been transparency. And I'd also say, you know, we know that Ghislaine Maxwell has lied before in testimony, and things that she has said have flied in the face of what accusers have said and victims. And so, you know, she does have a motive here to try to get switched and has been moved to a less stringent prison and facility, and also in hopes that the president may, you know, wipe over everything. And so it's hard for me to believe much of what she has to say, knowing that she is trying to get her case essentially recused. But I do think it's fascinating that she doesn't think that he committed suicide, but she didn't give any good reason, in my opinion, for that.
Matt Bennett, so happy to have you here. They put your thing in there as Matthew Bennett. I've never heard anybody call you that. Do you ever go by Matthew?
My mother calls me that. No one else.
All right. A couple things that I want to ask you a couple questions. First of all, Third Way is had a sustained presence in Washington, D.C., outliving a lot of interest groups that come and go. How long has the Third Way been around?
Well, thank you for asking. It's very confusing. Third Way being on Two-Way, but we'll try to. We are 20 years old this year.
20 years old.
Somehow. Yeah, we were launched right after Bush was reelected.
And what's the mission of Third Way?
We are a center-left think tank. We produce ideas, both policy ideas and political ideas, for our allies, which tend to be moderate Democrats.
Yeah, and I will say the thing we asked Matt to come on to talk about is a good example of how Third Way is different than, I would say, most groups in Washington, which is they're entrepreneurial and they're engaged in the real world. And the project they did that we're going to talk about is right on the real world. It's not some Brookings or AEI like intellectual thing that has no connection to what's going on now in the real world of politics. And their mission to help Democrats. We'll see if you agree with me that this is an interesting way to try to seize the moment. Matt, are you interested in all talking about the Maxwell thing, or would you rather take a pass?
I know nothing about it. And while on cable, you can talk about things that you know nothing about. I think I'm going to pass on this August podcast.
Fair enough. Let's talk about, while we wait for more of the Maxwell stuff, let's talk about the Fed. As I said, Chairman Powell today, this is number 11, long Powell speech. And he said there could be a rate cut, even though he's concerned about the inflationary effects of the tariffs. He said, indicates may warrant interest rate cuts as the Fed proceeds, quote unquote, carefully. He said the tariffs could cause a one-time inflationary spike, price increases, but he said that wouldn't necessarily be all at once, but it could be over time from the same event. And the markets loved it. Number 12, please. Wall Street Journal. I don't know where they closed. Stock surge on Powell's speech. The Dow was up about 900 points after Powell cleared the path for a rate cut as soon as next month. And then the president, spoiling the moment maybe. Well, let's listen to Powell. Here's Powell, number 13, please.
Effects of tariffs on consumer prices are now clearly visible. We expect those effects to accumulate over coming months with high uncertainty about both timing and amounts. The question that matters for monetary policy is whether these price increases are likely to materially raise the risk of an ongoing inflation problem. A reasonable base case is that the effects will be relatively short-lived, a one-time shift in the price level. Of course, one time does not mean all at once. It will continue to take time for tariff increases to work their way through supply chains and distribution networks. Moreover, tariff rates continue to evolve, potentially prolonging the adjustment process. It's also possible, however, that the upward pressure on prices from tariffs could spur a more lasting inflation dynamic, and that is a risk to be assessed and managed.
Matt, from your point of view, is the relationship between now the president and the Fed something Democrats should be talking about? Or is this not for normal people? Because we're going to go to your point that Democrats should be talking about normal people.
There aren't a hell of a lot of people talking about the Fed, out in the real world. But I do think Democrats should be talking about inflation, and they should be talking about the risk of recession. And the reason that Powell was thinking about this rate cut is because he is worried about the economy slowing. And I am old enough to remember stagflation, where you had both a recession and inflation at the same time. And the reason that could happen here is because the inflationary pressures are kind of on purpose and external. They're the tariffs. I mean, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff today tweeted, look at that, to a report that tariffs could bring in $4 trillion over the course of the next 10 years, which I guess is great on the one hand, except that it is an enormous tax on Americans and an enormous driver of inflation. So they better be careful what they wish for. The Fed might cut the rates, but that could lead to an inflationary spiral and to a real problem with a recession at the same time.
So again, Matt, just to clarify, because I talk to Democrats about this all the time, focus on inflation rather than the process is what you'd advise. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, the number of people that could name the chairman of the Fed is very small, but the number of people that could tell you how much it costs to buy bacon is very large, and you should focus on the latter and not the former.
Yeah. All right, here's 14, Lyndsay. This is the president at the White House Visitor Center, where he had one of his many press interludes today, talking about Lisa Cook, who's the Fed governor, who the administration, a very unorthodox move, is putting out the fact that the Justice Department is now going to investigate her for mortgage-related fraud. Number 14, please.
Fire Lisa Cook, the Fed governor, over her
mortgage
fraud.
I'll fire her if she doesn't resign. Yeah, what she did was bad. So I'll fire her if she doesn't resign.
Lyndsay, in my career, I don't remember anything quite like this. And it's the question of whether the courts, if he does try to fire, because my impression is she has no intention of resigning, but and maybe they'll indict her and that will make it harder for her to stay. But I don't know if there's ever been a Fed governor under criminal indictment. But Lyndsay, do you think if the president fires her, that she's gone, or she'll challenge it in court? How do you game that out if the president goes forward and fires her?
Yeah, I think she will challenge it in court. And I think it's also an interesting move here, as he has pointed, the finger and been very tough on Jerome Powell and asking him to lower interest rates. He feels like it's unnecessary because there's so many other of our European allies who don't have these type of interest rates. And Powell said he's not, driven by these outside forces to make decisions. But hopefully, the markets enjoyed, the comments today from Powell surging today. And hopefully that is welcome news for Trump as well, because he, I think one of the interesting things here about this whole scenario is President Trump is really gambling with these tariffs. He thinks he has it all under control, but we're still negotiating with China, which is one of our largest trade partners and where so many goods are made. And so it really is, a trail that hasn't been blazed before to have an economy based on this type of tariff policy. It's not what he did before when he was in the administration, where he did what he is doing now as well, where you have very specific tariffs on copper, on steel, on aluminum, on certain things that you're trying to bring back to the US. It's really this very broad approach that we haven't really seen anyone do, at least in the modern era. Will that work? And I think that's what you're hearing today as well from Powell, saying it's very interesting scenario that we can't really see. We're not seeing the full effects of tariffs yet. But something else I'd like to point out here, and then I'll kind of point on your question, is the Fed has been working at cooling the job market for a long time in hopes that that specifically would bring down inflation. But the jobs market has been pretty bullish and it hasn't done exactly what they've wanted to. And so I almost hear Powell saying we have to adjust maybe our approach of what we're doing now that we're considering for these tariffs as well. But I also think that the Fed has to have kind of a collective approach. And this goes to what Cook should do about how they respond to this president, because they want to remain independent. And they will get, whatever they do for good or for bad, when you have a president who's being so aggressive towards them, they have to have a smart approach, because they have to prove the decisions that they make, how they will affect everyday Americans. And you have a president who's willing to point it out and saying, look, see, I was right, you were wrong. And I think this is something he wants to have in his back pocket for if tariffs don't go his way.
Right. All right. There's so much we could do. There's more sound from Maxwell. There's some pretty interesting sound from the president and the vice president, both about John Bolton. But I wanted to go straight to Matt and the third way and what they came out with today. Number one, please. Reported first by Politico Playbook this morning. Headline here: Can Democrats talk themselves out of the wilderness? Matt, just tell people, how did this project start? What was sort of the process you did it, and why you think it's important?
Look, I think after the disaster of the November elections for Democrats, there's been a lot of soul searching. And one of the things we've been really looking at is why have so many voters who might have voted for Clinton and or for Biden abandoned Democrats in 2024. And one of the reasons that we kept hearing in focus groups, and it would show up in public opinion data of all kinds, is they just think that we're weird, that we're out of touch with, we don't talk like they do, we don't think like they do, and especially that we are focused on things that are either irrelevant to them or are completely out of step with them. So if you look at the language that not a lot of Democratic elected officials use these kinds of phrases, but some of their staff do.
All right, let's put up number two, please. Keep talking.
Yeah, sure.
Some of the words. Go ahead.
Right. So we put a list out of 45 words and phrases that people in Democratic politics, advocates and philanthropists and staffers and some elected officials and candidates use, that are just incredibly off-putting. They just do not sound like normal people. You would never hear these words in a normal discussion in a bar or in a grocery store or, in the fabled diner of American politics. And what we've tried to convey to people is that is incredibly off-putting, and you sound super strange. And when you're trying to attract people and make the tent bigger, you don't want to use language that repels people and makes it smaller.
So we got, for those of you watching on YouTube as opposed to listening to podcasts, we've got some of the words up there. Things like the unhoused, food insecurity, housing insecurity, person who immigrated, birthing person, dislodging, triggering, othering, microaggression. Lyndsay, ever use any of these phrases?
Every day.
Yeah. So, Matt, it said in the piece in Politico that you guys didn't do research on this. So how did you come up with the words? Like, did you just, were you using AI or just from memory during the campaign? How did you come up with them?
I mean, we've been compiling this list for a while. And we've been making, we've been keeping it in our back pocket because we've been seeing it. We didn't do specific research. Like, we didn't test othering and birthing person. We had a gut instinct that when you talk about pregnant women as birthing people, most Americans find that odd. So I think we're right about our gut instinct on that. We might not be. We don't have, quantitative data to prove it. But I can tell you the response that we've gotten from people in politics has been overwhelmingly positive. There are people that don't like it. There are people that use these words. And let me just be clear that these words were all created with good intention. They were created to protect, in most cases, vulnerable populations, the trans population, homeless population. But it just isn't how people talk. And it doesn't do anything to protect those people. In fact, by being so off-putting, we think it puts those people more at risk. I mean, no one in normal America talks about homeless people as the unhoused. That is just not the way people talk. It's the way people talk on college campuses and, in the offices of philanthropies, but nowhere where voters are congregating.
Right. Okay, I want to get Lyndsay in a second, but I want to ask you a few more. First of all, I saw a tweet from the Progressive Caucus. It's the most liberal members of the House Democrats, and they're referring to Abrego Garcia as a Maryland father. Is that in the same category that you're talking about, or you have no problem with Maryland father?
I mean, those are all words people use, Maryland and father.
Yeah.
I think then you're getting into how do you characterize, that's a more kind of substantive question around how do you think about people like Garcia, which is a problematic guy. I think that's what you're getting at. He has 6 domestic violence complaints against him. But that's a very different thing than, using these kind of super elitist and weirdo types of language.
So here's what someone said to me today, who appreciated the concept of trying to help the party by having people talk normal. He was all for that. But what he said is almost all of these words exist because they're associated with an unpopular, far too liberal policy. And you, because you are a clever person, it's clear from what you said just now, what you said to Politico, you're not interested in having a big fight with the left. You're interested in trying to have the party succeed. But do you dispute the premise that the reason most, not all of these words exist is because they're in parallel with a policy that's far too liberal for most of the country?
Well, to be clear, we're happy to have big fights with the left. We're having those fights all the time over Zoran Mamdani and others. But and I think there's some truth to that if you're talking about, incarcerated persons rather than felons, then your view of the criminal justice system probably is different than most voters and from ours. Right. And so there are substantive differences underlying some of these language questions. But I also think that you can be very firmly in favor of rights for trans Americans without using the term chest feeder to talk about a woman who is breastfeeding her baby. I mean, there are ways of doing this without immediately turning off the audience that you're addressing.
Right. So you're for fixing language. And again, I think it's just so real world. Like, stop talking like you're abnormal, because if you do, you're not going to appeal to as many people. that doesn't mean you're not also wanting to have the policy fights. You're just trying to fix this one problem first. Is that fair?
Yeah, we're having the policy fights all the time. We're a think tank. That's, that's our bread and butter. But here we thought we would kind of stop and say, but also think about the way that you're communicating. That matters too.
Right. Lyndsay, questions for Matt?
Yeah, I think this is so fascinating. Read your memo, Matt's really, I think, hitting the moment in some ways that people haven't so far, because I think every time I've come on this show, I've talked about when I was on the campaign trail, and I feel like Democrats still have not found the nut, or cracked the nut rather, of how they lost so badly, because some Democrats would say we did nothing wrong. Maybe we could have had a better candidate or switched our candidate out sooner. And then other people think there should be an overhaul of policy. But I do think, it goes back to words do matter, and the way you talk to voters matters. And there were so many people that I spoke with who were on the fence, who were just frustrated with what has become a MAGA term, that common sense felt like it had been lost in the Democratic Party. And a lot of these people were Democrats who were saying, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. I never thought I would ever do this before, but my party has lost me. And because of these things of, birthing person, trying to be so politically correct with such a small percentage of the population, I think the question I have really is, what is the acceptance level of people willing to do this? Because, you think about Donald Trump, he speaks, a lot of people like, because he speaks like a lot of his voters, a lot of his base. He gets criticized for that. What is the acceptance for Democrats to say, yeah, we do need to adjust this? And are they accepting of what you found?
Yeah, it's a good question. The overwhelming response that we've gotten directly to us, not the kind of online social media, Red Rose 1452, has been positive. And that includes from a lot of members of Congress, senior staff there, and a lot of pollsters and other consultants who work in Democratic politics. They all understand that this stuff's incredibly toxic, and they've seen there's a guy named Steve Shale, Mark, you probably know him, who tweeted that he's actually seen people in focus groups say, like, Democrats use words like, I don't even know what the hell they're talking about, or it sounds super weird. And I think your point is exactly right, Lyndsay, which is, Democrats like to say, oh, look at Trump, he's incoherent and he talks like a fourth grader. But actually, Trump is one of the great communicators in American politics. I don't like anything the guy says, not a thing, but he says it incredibly well. And the repetition that he uses in his language, all of that's very effective. So we have a lot to learn from Trump. We're not going to be able to ape him effectively, and we shouldn't try. But we can learn not to be very off-putting with the kind of very elitist things that we say.
So Matt, go ahead, Lyndsay, go ahead.
There's another thing. I think a lot of it is being politically correct. Is there an appetite to, because we don't want to be offensive. We want to show that we're inclusive, but in such a way you've become exclusive because people don't feel like they can identify with what you're even talking about. So would you say that, the woke term is kind of something of the past and kind of icky now? Is politically correctness something that people are going to be okay with, where their own party is not going to, their base isn't going to lambast them for these things?
Yeah, I think so. I think that if more and more members of Congress and elected officials and candidates start just speaking their mind in ways that are very forthright and are willing to put up with some blowback from the advocate community, many of whom actually don't represent a lot of the people they purport to represent. They could say, well, if you don't use the term Latinx, then you are defaming the Latino population. Well, frankly, the Latino population does not think that at all. Just ask people like Ruben Gallego about that. So I think if they're willing to push back and say, come on, this is wrong. You do not represent the population that you say you do. And I'm going to go ahead and talk like a normal person. I think they're going to get a lot of, they will be rewarded for that. Maybe not on Twitter or X, but with votes. So I do think that the worm is turning here a little. The responses that we've gotten suggest that it is, but it's going to take a little more pushing to get there.
Yeah.
Not the least bit surprised, Matt, that you got such favorable reaction, because you and I both know, and Lyndsay too, so many Democrats who would feel like, thank goodness someone's saying this and being specific. But I'm sure the Progressive Caucus members are not going to say, "Oh, Matt's right. Let's eliminate that." And then there's some members who aren't using that. I don't know. I don't know that Mr. Gallego, for instance, used that. So what's the? I don't know if you want to name a specific person or just like the profile, but where do you see this actually working? The kind of person who was saying these things before, but now would stop.
That's really hard to say. I don't know of anyone who's like set these things aside, but I will tell you there are people that are doing this really well. Ruben is one of them, and another is Richie Torres. Now, Richie Torres is Afro-Latino and gay, and his view is like, this is all nuts. Do not talk this way. None of the communities that I come from and that I represent in Congress want you to talk this way. And so I think it's really important for people like Richie to do what he's doing, which is show that talking like normal people is not only inoffensive to the people you're worrying about, but actually that's what they want from you as well.
Yeah. All right, let's do this real quick, and then we're going to get to your questions for Matt and for Lyndsay. So please raise your hand. I want to play you another piece of Maxwell sound. This is her talking about whether she ever saw Donald Trump do anything inappropriate. Then a quick break, and then we'll go to your questions. So go ahead and play that piece of sound, please.
And Mark, there are two others right after this.
Okay, just play them all.
Him in his house, for instance. I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
While we're on this topic, just again, I know we're jumping around and we've been going at it for a while, so I apologize. But there's recently been reports about a birthday book that you assembled for Mr. Epstein, I think for his 50th birthday in 2003.
That's true.
What do you know about that?
So my
questions are being asked by the Deputy Attorney General
at his 60th, and when Epstein would talk about his 50th, he said, "I don't know what I'm going to do," and I said, "Well, there's a nice thing. So my mum did this book for my dad." And he said, "I love that idea." He said, "Can you help coordinate it?" And he organised he called a lot of the people himself. I coordinated the putting together of the book, and in some instances I called people that asked them to contribute.
What was in the book? Like, what was the ask of the people you called?
It's his 50th birthday. Say anything you want on a piece of paper.
Okay. Do you remember President Trump submitting a letter or a card or a note?
I don't.
Do you think the articles? Well, do you remember seeing that book or any portion of the letters in your discovery in New York?
Yes.
Okay, what do you remember seeing?
I remember there were some portions of that book, but what surprised me, what surprised me was how few there were, because I thought if you had those, where are the rest? There was none of Mr. Trump.
In your discovery?
In my discovery, sorry. President Trump, there was nothing from President Trump.
And do you remember?
Okay. Again, 8 hours. Have at it this weekend if you wish. Quick word from another sponsor, and then we're going to go to your questions. Please raise your hand if you'd like to. When you're hiring, what's most important is finding great people and finding them fast. The best way to do that is with Indeed. Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get those job posts seen. We've all done that. We've gone to job sites and just posted things and don't hear anything back or hear back from folks who aren't really qualified. Indeed, sponsored jobs help you stand out and help you find great candidates fast. Data suggests if you do the sponsored job posts, you get 45% more qualified applicants than the non-sponsored jobs. Don't hesitate. And here's why. Go right now to Indeed.com/two-way and get a $75 sponsored job credit courtesy of us. You're welcome. Indeed.com/two-way right now. Support the program by doing this and try out to see whether, in fact, you can hire more quickly than you otherwise could. Again, Indeed.com/two-way. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. And now all we need is for some of you to ask questions. Ryan, welcome in. Lyndsay and Matt are both here for you. Tell folks, Ryan, where you are, what's on your mind.
Yeah, appreciate that. I'm in Inverness, Florida. And my question is for Matt Bennett. Matt, I was a big fan after the election. Your Third Way produced a paper basically saying like where he thought the Democrats went wrong. I read the paper. It was like a PDF, maybe 10 pages. I can't quite remember. I thought you nailed it. Your organization nailed it from at least my perspective. And that's all well and good. The language change, well and good. It seems that you know exactly where the party needs to go, but it seems most of the leadership of the party is deathly afraid of the activists. You can almost see it in their eyes when they're on the media that they are nervous about saying anything that would offend the activist base. Do you have a strategy for how the leadership of the party and the aspiring leadership can take on the activists and win?
Might be the best question ever asked on this platform. I'm not kidding. Really tough, really important. Matt.
Well, first of all, thanks for that, and I'm really glad you liked our stuff. And it's a great question. The answer, I think, is it's going to require younger members to show the leadership how it's done. And so I think guys like Gallego and Torres are doing that. I think Alyssa Slotkin from Michigan is doing that. In regard to the language, it's, all of them have said some version of what we said, which is like, just talk like a normal person. Do not talk like a freak. That is seemingly easy, but harder than you think. And for some of the reasons that you state, that people are worried about getting blowback online. The other thing that people need to do is recognize that you can keep your principles. You can be for trans rights and gay rights and supporting the homeless population and making sure that we have a sane and just justice system. You can do all of those things without using words that the activists kind of demand that you use. And in fact, you can prosper by saying to them, no, I am not going to go there. I'm going to use words that normal people do. And then the final thing I'd say is the real rubber is going to meet the road here as we move past the midterms and get into the primary election, because ultimately that is where party brands are developed. I mean, we're going to go into the midterms with a pretty crappy brand. I don't think there's going to be any fixing it between now and next year. And we're going to have to hope that the Republican brand is crappier. And at the moment, I think that's a pretty good hope. And look, all midterms are referenda on the president's party. This one will be too. But the day after the midterms, we're going to start to have a big fight in our party about what the direction ought to be. And that fight better end with a leader that can take us forward, and that's somebody who is unafraid of the very things that you pointed to our leaders being afraid of now.
Matt, any questions for Ryan you'd like to ask?
So Ryan, I'm just curious, how do you identify politically?
So I voted for Obama twice. Then I voted Gary Johnson in 2016, and then I voted Trump twice. And so I'm a little bit all over the spectrum. At this point, I guess I would consider myself a nationalist populist sort of thing. I feel like if you deport enough people, wages go up and housing prices go down. And at that point, we may be at that point. I want to say we have something like 55 million active visas for this country, work and tourist. We have something like a fourth or a fifth of our population are foreign born. Those things, they're people, they live in houses. So anyways, I guess I'm leaning more towards the MAGA Trump side of the house these days, but I've been, voted for Obama twice, like I said. So, yeah.
Well, you are the center of the target for Democrats. If we can't convince you in the next 3 years to come back, we have a real problem. And so I will be doing my level best, Ryan, to convince you to vote for whomever we nominate in 2028.
I used to do a little bit of volunteering for the DFL, the Democratic Farm Labor Party in Minnesota back in the day. I'm from rural Minnesota, and they actually used to dominate rural Minnesota. And so, yeah, it'd be nice to see a Democratic Party that could be competitive in rural areas again.
Yeah.
Lyndsay, question for Ryan?
Yeah, Ryan, what would it take? Like, what is the key issues for you in the coming years? Like, what are your issues that really made you switch over?
Yeah. It was probably the cultural alienation, I feel, to be honest with you. Like I said, I think third way is nailing the problem with the Democratic brand, and it's mostly cultural alienation. I saw a stat on X that only 19% of white Gen Z men are registering as Democrats, which is a big problem, not necessarily now, but if that trend line continues for the future of the Democratic Party. And I think it's cultural alienation. That's the main thing. I'd like to see a little bit more of a pivot back to normalcy, at least in how they speak and approach things.
Real quick, Ryan, do you feel like you are alienated as a white man?
Oh yeah, from the Democratic Party, 100%. Yeah, you only have to literally listen to them talk at their conventions, at anytime they get together. Yeah, I do.
Ryan, thank you. Grateful to you. Thank you for being part of Two-Way. Rebecca, if you're there, if you could unmute, tell folks who don't know where you are, questions for Matt and Lyndsay.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I kind of wanted to see, like Mandani, is he gonna, like, try to explain what I want to say. Gavin Newsom, if the Democrats are looking to support Mandani, is that going to reflect on Gavin Newsom if he wants to run in 2028?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Matt, so curious to know what you say about this, because obviously it's a big debate. I think Mandani is almost certain to win, although there's still a little bit of time for things to change. Are you in the school that says that if he wins, it's going to be a big problem for whoever your candidates in 26 and your candidate in 28, or not necessarily?
Yes, I think I'm worried about it. I don't know that it's certain to be a big problem in 28. By then, who knows? This election may be in the rearview mirror, but I think it's a problem now. Look, Mamdani is clearly a great communicator, and he was smart to talk about kitchen table issues. So got to give him both of those things. Ran a great campaign. The other two guys ran terrible campaigns, or all the other people ran bad campaigns, especially Cuomo. And, he won it. The problem is that he is a proud member of the Democratic Socialists of America. And he makes no bones about that. I mean, he marched with a DSA banner. He sent out a fundraising email for the DSA like this year. So that's not good, because the DSA is way, way out there. I mean, if you think the language we put in that memo is bad, you should check out the DSA platform, which is completely bonkers. And
Matt, what are some of the things in the platform that you think are particularly problematic?
I'll tell you two unbelievable things. One is the DSA says that we should close all prisons and free all incarcerated persons, all of them, all the people in jail. I mean, no sane person thinks that, and Mamdani doesn't think that. But the problem is he's affiliated with this group that has this in their platform. Another thing in the platform is basically the nationalization of all industry. I mean, they take their socialism very seriously at the DSA. So that is a very, very toxic brand. And when Mamdani wins, because there's no doubt you're right, he's going to win, it is very important that as mayor of New York, he makes clear that that is not what he, as the Democratic mayor of New York, he's running on our line, believes or wants to do. He needs to put distance between himself and the DSA, or else it is going to be a real problem for people, to Rebecca's question, like Gavin Newsom or anyone else who's running in 2028.
Rebecca, thank you. Ask Lyndsay first and then Matt. If you were trying to find a good governor of California, would you want the person to be smart? Yes. Would you want them to have been successful? Yes. Would you want them to have a good sense of humor? Yes. Now, those aren't the only three traits you would want, but I can guarantee you that joining us now is a gentleman who has all three of those things, although he's got a dour look on his face. Sorry, there's that winning smile. Stephen Cloobeck, some of you may not have heard of Stephen, and if you haven't, I'd recommend you go watch his video. He's been involved in Democratic politics a long time, but this is his first big effort. Stephen, have you ever run before? I don't think you have you?
I've been appointed. I was head of tourism in the United States. I worked for the Obama White House. I ran Nevada.
You've never put your name on the ballot before, right?
No, other than buying a very distressed company, and I needed not 51% of the vote. I had to get over 90%. You want to talk about a tough election, tendering for that company.
That's like Noriega level support.
Putin. Yeah.
Well,
I had to earn every vote in that tender offer.
I had a chance meeting with Stephen in Manhattan a few weeks ago, 3,000 miles away from his constituents, but he's a peripatetic sort. And he's running for governor of California. And unlike some people in the media, I like to give everybody a chance. I don't like to say we never heard of the guy, so of course he can't win. And the way these elections in California work, top 2 vote getters in the primary, regardless of party, go on to the general. So we're going to talk to Stephen a little bit. Grateful to you for joining with Lyndsay and Matt. First of all, do you know about Matt's organization, The Third Way, and do you consider yourself a third way Democrat?
Well, interestingly enough, my son at GW Law sent me your presentation this morning. He's third-year cont student at GW Law. And I read
he send it with a favorable recommendation?
Well, yes, he did, of course, because those are our family values. You know, old school Reagan Democrat. Harry Reid's my adopted dad. Bill Clinton's trained me. I'm a product of them. And I interviewed every single candidate in this race as one of the largest donors in the United States. And coming back to California, leading with my wallet after being in Nevada for 29 years, I was extremely disappointed. No succession in the state. There's not one candidate that I would back, that I would trust with the life safety of my family, nor my taxpayer dollars. Not one. Failed leaders, panderers, compromisers. And I was just at the forum for the SEIU convention forum in Sacramento last week, and I walked off stage. I said, you guys are a bunch, you circus. You guys are a circus. You want to attack aspiration. I'm a self-made guy. Matter of fact, I started with negative $20 million. And I've worked very hard, and I'm proud of that. But I grew up with, respect, results, responsibility, and you got to show results. And if you want to talk about the issues in California, which I've done due diligence on for the last 17 months, there are solutions. I have a solution for the insurance crisis. It's very similar to me fixing the insurance problem in my worldwide company. Property, liability, casualty, using the captive of the state with a regulatory fix and a legislative fix. And the good news is I've passed many laws in many states. I've been a regulator and I've been a judge. So I come to the table with unique skill sets. And I'm just trying to change the conversation where everyone does matter. Frank Luntz and I have worked together for 30 years, both on public and private. Matt, Frank.
Sure.
We've been very, very successful. And the Democratic Party is not woke, it's weak. It needs a set of brass balls. Somebody who's done it in business. Somebody who can actually stand up and deliver to all the customers of California or even the United States value. I mean, we all pay taxes, we're all customers. And we deserve value for our tax dollars.
So, Stephen, I'm going to ask you one question, then turn it over to Lyndsay and then Matt.
Sure.
And grateful again for being here. Everything you've said makes you sound maybe not like a core Democrat. So what makes you, not taking anything away from what you just said about your vision, but what makes you a Democrat?
Well, it's a Democrat of a relic is what it is, Mark.
What are the policy positions you share with the Democratic Party?
Taking care of the customer, serving, the juxtaposition, they call me the Trump of the Democratic Party, tongue in cheek. I do have those brass balls. I'm not afraid to just call out with specificity what the customers need to fix the problems after they've been dissected and fight those fights, being uncompromised. And, look, it's about balance sheet, income statement. I'm a guy who believes we don't steal. It's not $950 in California. We don't steal. If I stole when I was a kid, I think I'd be more afraid of my father than the police. We need to fund first responders. Our life safety is most important. What do we pay tax dollars for?
Do you believe that human activity causes global warming?
I believe we should think about making the climate better for our children. A positive statement.
Okay. Do you believe that a woman should be able to get an abortion in the 9th month of pregnancy?
No, that's silly behavior. Come on. I was trained to be a cardiac thoracic surgeon. That's just silly, silly, silly. Listen, it's a woman's right to choose. And if all the women of the United States want to choose that, well, then that's their choice. I believe more in what people want. Just deliver equal or greater value. Okay.
Lastly, for me, and then Lyndsay, do you believe that some number of the people in California, elite, came to this country illegally, but have committed no other crimes since coming here, do you believe some number of those people should be deported?
I believe there should be a pathway to citizenship if they haven't committed a crime. Shame on the federal government for having porous borders. But we do need strong borders.
Lyndsay.
It's nice to meet you, Stephen. You know, you have a lot of people who talk like you, someone like Joe Manchin, who's walked away from the party, become an independent.
I know Joe very well. I've been around 40 years around the hoop.
Yeah. Why don't you think there are more people like you in the Democratic Party?
You know, look, Joe and I worked together when I ran tourism in the United States, and Clinton tried that. Harry Reid and Obama got it on with the Travel Promotion Act 2009. The return on invested capital is supposed to be 5-1. I made it 40-1, and they went, "Oh my God!" I got yelled at many a time and apologized. I just got the job done. I think people have given up, Lyndsay. I've gotten disenchanted with being a Democrat, but I don't fit into the Republican Party because I roll up my sleeves and serve. I started as a busboy. I serve. I take care of people. I've been in the hospitality business my entire career. Equal or greater value to my customers and my team. It's just a different philosophy. I fix broken. And that's a skill set. That's a skill set. And there's not one person running in California that has that skill set. Sorry. Go ahead.
Matt, go ahead.
Stephen, what's the kind of theory of how you win this thing? I mean, have you looked at what is your lane? It's certain to be a Democrat's going to win it, but there's
a Democrat will look. Look, it's all data analytics, Matt. And Mike Madrid's on my team. You know Mike.
Sure.
So I got Mike. I've got Frank Luntz. Oh wow, I've got Democrats and Republicans on my team.
Yeah.
But when I grew up in California, that's the way it was. And when I was in Nevada, you couldn't tell the difference between a Democrat and a Republican. We've just become so polarized with vitriolic words. And, I'm willing to take a shot for my kids and my kids' future because I don't want them moving out of California because it's not affordable, livable, or workable. Fact. There does need to be a pathway to citizenship. Our great exports need to be crowed about. We need performance and results in the state. Yeah, the California Department of Performance and Results, CPR. Ha. But look, it's going to take a little P.T. Barnum. It's going to have to also take somebody standing up to Donald, which I've done. I don't know if you looked at my new ads that are out. One's called Cheaters on this redistricting. If you want to talk about dystopian, do you guys see the movie Civil War?
No.
Watch it. It was done by a Brit.
Stephen,
it's where Texas and California gang up together to create the Western forces.
Stephen, are you going to fund your own campaign in part?
No, I'm aligned. I have any deal that I've done in my life. I'm always aligned. We've raised money and I put in money. We have plenty of runway, and we're building name, ID, and brand. Everything that we talk about, folks, is based on polling of the California customer. Not D nor R, but the California customer.
Who do you think? Which other candidates besides you in this race do you think have a chance to win?
Well, look, it's way too early to tell right now who's going to have enough money to hold on. California's a big state to hold on to, as you know, and things change so rapidly. Look, I put in some extra money just before the filing deadline, 7/31, right after Harris dropped. She dropped on the 30th. Filing deadline was 31st. I added another $10 million, and Lieutenant Governor dropped out. And she was number 2. So, look, it's going to be a costly race. I don't know who's going to have the horsepower to do it and the voice that's going to succeed. Sheriff that's running, who is violating the law each and every day, running around in his uniform, which is against California law. You got a sheriff that's running for governor violating the law. He thinks he's above the law. But, and then you got Steve Hilton, who's a lovely guy who I met years ago with Cameron. Frank Luntz introduced me to him. Phenomenal parliamentary government. You know, he and I get along, but you know, he doesn't have the skill set to do what's needed. I'm just, if there was somebody else that I would see that would have the skill set to do this, I would love to back them. I don't see it. Okay. I don't see it.
Here's one of Stephen's videos, and I always love to show people their own spot. So here's one of the new videos Stephen's put out.
Donald Trump being busted cheating at golf.
Trump paying somebody to handle his balls is nothing new. But my plan for California is. I'm Stephen J. Cloobeck, and I'm the businessman, Donnie, you pretend to be. I build and repair brands, you wreck them. I create value, you bankrupt companies. You demand to be served, I'm always here to serve. I'm the Democrat fighting to make California affordable, livable, and workable for you. Oh, and Donnie, with a little d, if you ever want to play an honest round of golf, the fee's on me.
Re-rack it, Sam, just because I want everybody to see the top, because the money shot, as like all good productions, the very first shot, you see the President Trump's caddy seeming to reposition his ball. So we can play that again. Is that possible? Just watch on the left side of the screen.
True.
I'm not familiar with this video. Do you know, Stephen, where's this video from? Like how long ago?
Donald Trump being busted cheating at golf.
Trump paying somebody to handle his balls is nothing new.
There you go.
But you know, at least Clinton drops it all the time. You know, he laughs about it.
Yeah, mulligans. Matt, what do you think of that video?
That's a great video. It's funny and it's directed at Trump, which is what California voters want to hear.
That's correct.
I mean, the real question is going to be when, you know, voters start to pay attention next year and they start to think about the various candidates, you're going to have to put distance between yourself and the others. But for now, I think getting on their radar by attacking Trump with a ad that's funny and sharp is really smart.
Lyndsay?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely a cheeky ad. I think it's tough. That's what Democrats want, is someone to fight for them. My question is, you know, how do you resolve the ICE issue there in California? I know that immigration is really, really important. How do you get in the weeds on that?
Well, you know, Lyndsay, I've been in the field on the issue and working with CBP and DHS, which I did for 3 years. I've talked to the officers. They're unsafe. They feel unsafe. They don't have a perimeter set up. They're not doing it properly. It's not done sanely and humanely. Look, nobody in the Latina community or the AAPI community, Asian community, the Black or white community wants criminals in their homes, schools, or workplace, period. Everyone agrees to that. It's how we do it. It's how we do it. This militant style, I mean, the raid today with Bolton, the takeover of the police in D.C., come on.
Stephen, do you support the Gavin Newsom generated effort to redistrict? Do you support that?
Unfortunately, I have to. I'm not happy about it. I would love to see Texans vote on it. I don't like what's happening in the Texas State House with the governor. Let the Texans decide. If the Texans want to decide, well, that's a different story.
So why do you have to support it?
You have to support it because California's got to do what California needs to do to protect itself. California, about 13 years ago, we passed independent redistricting, and that was by the voters. But in this intermediate period of time, and then I go back to this movie, Civil War, where like the juxtaposition of Texas and California ganging together in the Western forces against DC. I don't want to give you the spoiler, but it's ... But
Stephen, if people want to learn more about your campaign, where can they go?
They can. Thank you for asking. You go to California Get a Clue, CLOO.com. I've got 72 trademarks on this campaign. This is the business in me. It's got to be fun. We got to bring back humor, and we got to fight for the hard center of the Democratic Party. And Matt, bravo with what you wrote. I thoroughly agree. And I don't see, and look, I'm very friendly with no labels and, you know, everything that somebody's tried to do with regard to creating a third party. I just don't see it happening. To get it accomplished is so costly and time consuming.
Stephen, I'm going to come out there. We're going to go to a diner in El Segundo together, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Taco Bell's good with me too.
Grateful to you and looking forward to having you come back regularly.
Please,
Lyndsay, thank you for coming back, and Matt, so grateful to have you on to bring that incredibly intriguing project to us and sharing its genesis and how the reaction has been. So thank you for that.
By the way, Mark, you missed me on Jimmy Kimmel last night. I was on Jimmy Kimmel.
You were?
Oh yeah.
How'd you know I missed it?
I don't know.
All right.
Hey, next time I'm in New York, dinner's on me. Okay.
All right. Okay. I will go somewhere expensive because apparently you got 10 million bucks to put in the race. Thank you all, three of you. Thank you all for watching. This program's on hiatus. We're taking a little break. So we'll be back on September 2nd. No more episodes, please. 6 o'clock Eastern next Monday. Don't send me an email saying, Mark, where's the show? I'm telling you now, we're on break. We'll be back. Morning meetings on break too. In the meantime, you got a full week to download the podcast, to subscribe, like everything. Both the morning meeting and 2A tonight available as podcasts. We'd like you to be part of it as well as on YouTube, where we crossed 100,000 subscribers this week. Thank you for being part of 2A. Again, thanks to Stephen and Matt and Lyndsay, and I will see you on January 2nd. Sorry, September 2nd. Have a great night, great weekend, and a great week